Let's do it. Greetings, my fellow from Love Sovereign Thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangoes of South Florida. And today's date, Saturday, January 2nd, 2016. Well. Hopefully everyone had a safe holiday weekend. I know I saw a bunch of prima donnas out there after I got off of work. I did the producers. It was fun and got off early, went downtown Fort Lauderdale. They have news from my little colleagues in the business. But you got a bunch of people trying to indulge as usual and acting stupid, of course, tumbling away. But there's nothing new. However, hopefully everyone is being safe. It's interesting. Got to bring this up because I recall like staying with my cousins on over the Christmas weekend. I had taken the initiative to watch the documentary Soaked in Bleach, which is about the death of Kurt Cobain, and based on the private investigator who was a former cop in Los Angeles, was doing the interviews with Courtney Love, made his claim he was missing, this and that, and it was a good analysis, on his part, because many of the people know that I chat with question his death, and they recommended me like 5, 6 years ago to check out Kurt and Courtney, and I just taking the exam, I examined it, and there were some discrepancies and smoking guns, I would say, on what happened to Kurt Cobain. And so when I was watching this documentary, the really thing that really caught my attention is how much heroin he intaked, allegedly, before he blew his brains out, allegedly. Okay, and I say that out of respect. And even with the toxicology report, with I think it's like 200 grams of heroin, but it's way up there, and the morphine level was like 1.5. It doesn't really add up. Person with that much, even though he weighed 130 pounds or 35 pounds, according to the death certificate or the coroner report, regardless, putting all that in drugs, narcotics, heroin, and morphine into your body, and believe that person is capable of shooting himself with a 12 gauge shotgun in a lying position. There's a lot. I say that as foul play. In addition, the way it was being held, the shotgun was being held. The cartridge should be taken out, exposed on the right side, and what was funny, it was on the left side of him, and it didn't make sense whatsoever. And of course, according to based on the investigation, Courtney Love's interview was very sketchy, too many discrepancies. And I just have to say, too, even the former police chief in Seattle, believed that the case needs to be reopened. Everything got fast-tracked. His body was cremated 6 days after his death. And there was even reports, too, that he was going to file for divorce and have the will taken in Courtney Love's will, off the will, transferred to his daughter. And I'm talking to an individual like myself. I am not a Nirvana fan. Okay, I openly admit that. I don't hate the band. But I know I was very critical about his death, because especially with the exploitation. Okay, that's one thing I got a little bit disturbed. And I saw people, I remember I did this live concert at that was down in Miami Arena. Everyone had those Kurt Cobain shirts. Almost half the people there, kids wearing Kurt Cobain shirts. Especially I witnessed one. There was a silkscreen version of his death certificate. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I used to say, F Kurt Cobain, screw him. But now, I could thank some of my colleagues out there opening my eyes a little bit and have taken the initiative on examining these documentaries. And now I see a bigger picture. I do have to say this case needs to be reopened. And I don't care if you're a Courtney Love fan or not. This case needs to be reopened because we even found the documentary Silk and Bleach. She has all the control of his music and royalty, which is lots of money. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you do, whether you're a fan or not. It's a lot more bigger than what they want us to know. Well, that's like my little view on Soaked in Bleach. So I'll probably add it to my footnotes, if you want to check it out. I'll try to put that in there. So, yeah. Well, on the other hand, I'm going to be talking on a few good amount of topics here, especially with the whole hype and hoopla of President Obama, the Lord and Savior, Barrister Toro, who has that teleprompter reading fetish. And many of my listeners know he's just another stooge as usual, just like his predecessor, and before that, etc. This is from Washington Post, came out yesterday. Juliet Epperin. It's entitled "Obama Plans Curbs on Guns." Of course, there's a little video, like a little short video from WhiteHouse.gov about Obama hints at gun control in New Year's Day message. So, and he actually this is spoken from Honolulu, according to the article. It says here, President Obama will press ahead with the set of executive action on guns next week, despite growing concerns in the United States over terrorism that have dampened some Americans' enthusiasm for tighter firearms restrictions. The president will meet Monday with Attorney General Loretta E. Lynch to finalize a series of new gun control measures and will announce his package for a proposal soon after, according to several individuals who spoke on the condition of anonymity because the plan is not yet public. One of the main proposals Obama is poised to adopt would require some unlicensed gun dealers to get licenses and conduct background checks on potential buyers. The change is aimed at occasional dealers, including some who sell online frequently or rent tables at gun shows but don't have a storefront. Obama began examining how he can tighten the nation's gun rules after October's mass shootings at Umpqua Community College in Roseburg, Oregon. Administration lawyers have spent reviewing various proposals to make sure they can withstand legal challenges. Well, I gotta say this to those clowns up in the District of Criminals: it's a firearm-free zone. It's easy pickings. I will proceed. The idea requiring informal gun dealers to obtain a license from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or the BATFE, and conducting the backgrounding checks came up 2 years ago when White House officials drafted a proposal for dealers who sell at least 50 guns annually. Woo! By the ATF. I can dream. The ideas were shelved because of legal concerns but gained new momentum after the Rosenberg shooting. At the point, Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton said she would pursue such a requirement by executive action if elected. Administration officials gave the proposal another look and determined it could be done in a way that was legally defensible. Another mouthpiece. The puppet zone. The White House review has been conducted in relative secrecy, soliciting input from gun safety groups without specifying which policies the administration might ultimately adopt in the past month. Obama has met with former Representative Gabriel Giffords, Democrat from Arizona, who was gravely injured in a 2011 mass shooting, with their husband, Mark Kelly, and with former city mayor Michael R. Bloomberg and the president of Every Town for Gun Safety, which Bloomberg helped start. Okay, so you got the Brady Bunch. A lot of lands want to hold hands. And here's the thing. If you're going to do that, make sure your bodyguards are unarmed as well. Okay? And everyone knows what I think about Bloomberg. Flush the toilet. Now we'll continue on here. In Obama's weekly radio address released a day earlier than usual, the president said he was moving unilaterally because Congress had failed to address the growing problem of gun violence. A dummy. How about violent crime? That's what he had to say. A few months ago, I directed my team at the White House to look to any new action I can take to help reduce gun violence, he said. And on Monday, I'll meet with our Attorney General Loretta Inch to discuss our options. And I will bend over to the New World Order as well. That's added in there because I get too many letters from parents and teachers and kids to sit around and do nothing. Obama continued. I get letters from responsible gun owners who grieve us every time when these tragedies happen, who share my belief that the Second Amendment guarantees the right to bear arms, and who share my belief we can protect that right while keeping an irresponsible, dangerous view from inflicting harm on a massive scale. Oh, really? Oh, good grief. Kind of, sort of, right? Assumption man. Go figure. And it's in reviewing its options. The administration has shut down the congressional Republicans, which joined some Democrats help block legislation to expand background checks after the 2012 mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newton, Connecticut, which, according to FBI.gov, Table 8. In the year 2012, there were 0 murders in Newton, Connecticut. And where was Sandy Hook Elementary School in? Newton, Connecticut. So stop playing the phantom game. Stop lying to us. Now we'll proceed. The administration has not communicated with us, and we have not been briefed. Doug Andres, a spokesman for House Speaker Paul D. Ryan, Republican from Wisconsin, another neocon stooge as usual, said in an email, we will consider options once we have information. But what seems apparent is none of these ideas would have prevented the recent atrocities. Our focus should be on the consistent causes of these actions, mental illness and terrorism, rather than infringing on law-abiding Americans' constitutional rights. Yep, my rights are natural born, chump. Plain and simple. You don't legislate my natural born rights. Continue on. While most Republicans, presidential candidates did not provide immediate reaction to Obama's announcement, they are expecting to talk about it in the coming days. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush is scheduled to attend a gun show in Orlando on Sunday, where he will discuss the high marks he has received from the National Rifle Association. Yes, use the gun owner because he's still a tyrannical stooge and a Nazi sympathizer, Jeb. And you love supporting an empire. I remember your speech down at Miami-Dade Community College in Kendall. You announced your presidency. You are invalid, null and void, in my view, tyrannical. Catherine Frazier, a spokeswoman for Ted Cruz, Republican for Texas, said that President Obama is trying to distract Americans from his failure to address that true threat of radical Islamic terrorism, and instead going after the rights of law-abiding American citizens is complete lunacy. If Ted Cruz is elected president, the lawlessness will end on day one on Americans' personal liberty will be restored and protected. Hey, my Bill of Rights has always been automatically nullified on those baseless laws or bills, etc. Okay? Obama will make his case for additional government restrictions in a number of forums in the coming months, according to aides, including during his January 12th State of the Union address, while beefing up background checks has strong support. A Quinnipiac University poll found that 89% of Americans supported checks for purchase at gun shows and for online sales. Usually, this is so funny. I'm going to stop right there for a moment. Even if you purchase stuff online, they say you have to take it to a particular gun dealer where you want that firearm. So you have to send it to the gun dealer's address. It has to be FLL licensed, and they do it right there. So I don't know where he's getting this Twilight Zone rhetoric from. There's a black market for that. No big deal. No surprise whatsoever. And it's just another more crap to put on the table. So potent that you want to vomit. All right, Obama's actions also come as Americans have grown more fearful about the prospect of terrorist strikes, and are expressing an openness to having open citizens carry guns. Washington Post, ABC News poll conducted last month in the wake of San Bernardino, California terror shootings, for example, found 50% of respondents opposed a ban on assault weapons ban. A record high when asked, which is better reaction to terrorism. 47% said encouraging more people to carry guns legally, while 42% enacting stricter gun laws. Federal law requires that those who are engaged in business of dealing in firearms to have a federal license and therefore to conduct background checks of potential buyers. But it exempts anyone who makes occasional sales, exchanges, or purchases of firearms for the enhancement of a personal collection or for a hobby, or who sells all or part of his personal collection of firearms. The administration wants to narrow that exemption so that more gun sellers will have to get licenses. It is clear how many possible deals a change in the rule would affect. Since these activities are not formally tracked and the administration has not disclosed what criteria it has selected to judge which gun sellers will have to register for a federal license. The guns used in the several recent mass shootings include the ones in Roseburg and San Benito were purchased legally, and their buyers were subject to background checks. Every town spokeswoman, Erica Soto Lamb, said the current interpretation of what it means to be engaged in business of selling firearms is a hazy definition that allows high-volume sellers to transfer thousands of guns without background checks, no questions asked. Okay, well, I don't know where she get her information from. The administration has been weighing other proposals, including requiring federally licensed gun dealers to report any loss and stolen guns to the National Crime Information Center, providing guidance on restricting dangerous individuals from carrying guns within a specific distance of a school, clarifying that convicted abusers are prohibited from carrying guns regardless of their marital status, and instructing federal law enforcement to identify and arrest criminals who attempt to buy illegal guns. The package will contain at least half dozen measures and possibly more, according to those who have been briefed on it. Any action by the president is sure to trigger a major backlash from gun rights activists and Republican office holders. Jennifer Baker, an NRA spokeswoman, said in an email that the president is doing what he always does, and when he doesn't get his way, which is defied the will of the people, is issue an executive order. There is nothing more than a political stunt to appease anti-gun billionaire Michael Bloomberg and will do nothing to increase public safety, she said. Adding that dozen high-profile mass shooters passed background checks, including Gerard Lochner, who shot Gifford, and 19 others in Tucson, Dylan Roof in Charleston, South Carolina, and James Holmes in Aurora, Colorado. Well, like I say, this is a lot more complex than what it is. It even claims there's a lot of conspiratorial-related issues, which I do question in good faith. And if you hear my show in the past, you understand where I'm coming from. But we'll leave it at that. I will proceed here. Even as Obama made his radio pitch, a Texas law letting licensed handgun owners carry their weapons openly in public took effect. Texas Governor Greg Abbott mocked the president's latest push in a tweet, writing President Obama to impose world gun control. My response, come and take it. But groups such as MoveOn.org have begun to mobilize firearm owners who support expanded background checks and other measures aimed at curbing gun violence. How about violent crime? See, they want to use that buzzword, gun violence, gun violence, gun violence. It's a good sales pitch. Bernays propaganda. All right, check it out. You know, I'm going to add it to my footnotes, too. So I'm going to add that again to my footnotes. At least you folks can know what's happening. All right. David Mark Williams, a farmer in Halfway, Oregon, described guns as a tool. If you're hunting or living in a rural lifestyle, you're going to have a firearm. But Williams, who came to Washington this fall with MoveOn.org to meet with members of Congress from both parties, and he resigned his NRA membership after the group's president opposed stricter gun laws in the aftermath of the Sandy Hook shootings. I am a supporter of rational, reasonable gun control measures, Williams said. Probably got hired and got hired to be there. They probably gave him a plane ticket. Okay, so just to make that statement, allegedly. Arcady Gurney, a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, a liberal think tank, said in an email Friday, while the public opinion on completely banning particular types of guns is more mixed, there is no question that an overwhelming majority of Americans favor proposals like universal background checks that are aimed at keeping guns out of the wrong hands. And notably, such measures have been the primary focus of the administration, legislative, and executive actions. So you have here, I have some thoughts on guns I like to share. Okay, so some free speech here. But you know what? It's typical garbage, okay? You can write all the executive orders all you want. It doesn't matter if it's Barack Obama, Ted Cruz, doesn't matter. Or Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, it doesn't matter. Okay? Those documents you want to propose, those referendums, are null and void in my book. I don't give a damn if you support this or not. Doesn't matter if you support it. Plain and simple. That's why we got our Bill of Rights culture. It's not just the second, but the ninth. And you want to go through more background checks. You want to go through like have people go through hoops, climbing walls, going through cages, go to all these mazes to purchase the tool or equipment. To themselves, families have lifestyles, hunting, etc. Truth of the matter is, my friends, it's just another piece of Bernays' legacy. And here's another thing too, and I have to agree when some people tell me President Barack Obama is the best gun firearms promoter in presidential history. I have to agree with that. But for some folks, they're probably thinking, okay, so with this stuff being addressed, more people are going to be buying. So who's actually benefiting? Something to think about. And like I said, you gotta really think about these things. You got your shysters everywhere, so it's nothing new at all. But I do get a real big kick out of this. I know people are going around in fear. They're going to take our guns. They're going to take our guns. And you know what? Prohibition doesn't work at all. I'm going to add the video here by the 10th Amendment Center as well. Prohibition doesn't work. And definitely I'm going to put propaganda in there too, so folks can realize it, read it. It came out in 1928. Very good stuff. It's how they manipulate, trying to sell you something, and just people how they get caught hook, line, and sinker. They've used it in many avenues. The mainstream news, Hollywood, magazines, newspapers, etc. I say this. If Barack Obama is a real man, and all these other individuals, Michael Bloomberg and Loretta Lynch, if they're really that tough, let them do it without police assistance. Let's see how far they really go. The reason why I say that is not out of malice. You talk big, back it up. I look to any politician that supports tyrannical platforms. Doesn't matter what it is. Federal, state, or local. You go out there, do it yourself, on your own, without any of your potsies or so-called hired thugs, hired guns. Let's see how far they go. Because I'll tell you one thing, it won't last. Because here's one. I remember a time when Charles Van Wyck read about his views on Nelson Mandela, which it's no bitterness. He had no bitterness towards the man, but wasn't fond of his actions. And Nelson Mandela, according to him, Nelson Mandela wanted to ban the guns, and everyone in South Africa, whether black, white, or Asian, said, "Come and take it." You know what? Him and the ANC backed off really quick. Something to contemplate, my friends. And that's why I say, government keep out. And I repeat it again. If you're going to use a firearm for criminal intent, yeah, if you get convicted, you deserve harder sentences. I'm not going to argue about that whatsoever. Crime and our rights are two separate entities. And many of these individuals want us to compress it, as usual. Got to watch out for those buzzwords. They want you hypnotized, brainwashed, programmed. So, got to always think for yourselves. And I'm going to be done with that. Next, interesting news here came from SHTF Plan. And it's from Zero Hedge to be exactly, by Tyler Durden. And this one's entitled Gun Sales Surge in Switzerland as Army Chief Warns Arm Yourselves. And this is pretty interesting, so I'm going to check this out. It was originally released by Zero Hedge. Let's see here. It's going to be loaded. Oh, there goes. Voila. And as it reads, it would appear that the people of Switzerland have been listening to their military leaders, having recently been warned by the Swiss Army chief of growing social unrest, Swiss Info reports the application for gun permits in Switzerland increased by 20% between 2014 and 2015, according to a survey conducted in 12 cantons, which is like 12 jurisdictions. But while the army proposes arm yourself, Swiss crime prevention officials warn against the false sense of security that guns bring. Whereas 2011, numerous people in Switzerland voluntarily gave up their firearms, today more and more people are purchasing guns. Swiss Army Chief Andre Blattman warned the threat of terror is rising, the hybrid wars are being fought around the globe, the economic outlook is gloomy, and the resulting of migration flows of displaced persons and refugees have assumed unforeseen dimensions, adding that social unrest cannot be ruled out. He further recalled the situation around the two worlds in the last century and advised the people of Switzerland to arm themselves. Before I continue on, I made a mistake. I'm going to add the 2016 video about Obama want to take your guns. It's on a bit of YouTube, which is from the Net News Network, so I'll give you more details. Sorry about that. Now we'll continue. As Swiss Info reports, it appears they have applications for gun permits in Switzerland increased by 20% between 2014 and 2015, according to a survey conducted in 12 cantons by Swiss Republic Television (SRF). The survey published on Wednesday showed that in the 12 out of 26 canton survey, the Swiss are increasingly interested in purchasing pistols, rifles, and other firearms for private use. The greatest increase, more than 70%, was measured in Canton, Vaud, with more than 4,200 applications in 2015 compared with 2,427 in 2014. There is a general climate of uncertainty and an increased fear of intruders, said Pierre-Olivier Godard, head of crime prevention for Canton Vaud. But Martin Bosses, director of Swiss crime prevention, warned against the false sense of security that guns bring. When there are more guns in circulation, there's a great danger for society, he said in an interview on the 10-4-10 News program. That's shown by experience in places like the United States. When there are more guns, there are more accidents with guns. In Switzerland, with more than 8 million inhabitants, there are about 2.5 million legal weapons, around half of which are used for Swiss military service. And while the Swiss go about their legal business arming themselves, President Obama is preparing to unleash another weapon executive order to enact gun control legislation. Facing stiff resistance to gun control legislation in Congress, Mr. Obama has signaled he has planned to act on his own. The president has directed administration officials to explore any steps he could take on guns without lawmakers' help. He said in his weekly address that he would sit down with Ms. Lynch on Monday to discuss our options. Yes, I want a pencil-pushing attorney to think for me. I get too many letters from parents and teachers, and kids sit around to do nothing, Mr. Obama said in the address, which was released on Friday morning. Gun control advocates who are familiar with the White House's plans said Mr. Obama could lay out multiple executive actions as soon as next week, and the administration official has confirmed that recommendations for president are nearing competition. White House spokesman Eric Schultz said Mr. Obama asked his team to scrub existing legal authorities and assesses actions that could be taken administratively. Freedom, indeed. Of course. You're always going to expect that, my friend. This is just part of the propaganda machine. And one thing, too, about when the one person about, more accidents and so forth, like the United States, I'll say this, gentlemen, not Mr. Batman, but Pierre-Olivier Vaud. Truth of the matter is, the United States alone, an annual average of 2.5 million cases was used by responsible firearms owners to fight crime, defending their homes, families, loved ones, innocent bystanders, property, etc. Yes, accidents do happen, and I don't take that lightly either. You gotta always be responsible and know what you're doing. It's like you don't play, like, remember to tell when you're a kid, don't play with matches? There you go. just like that. You got to learn these pieces of tools and equipment like everything else. We all have to take responsibility for our actions. And as I always say before, firearm safety is everyone's responsibility who owns them. Plus, we have a higher standard. Bring it up a notch. Use it with homage, honor, respect, politeness, etc. Not flaunt it like some glam boy, like you're at a fashion show, a glam girl. I've seen some of these photos. They're out there prancing around. I'm like, this is what I'm looking like we should play David Bowie fashion, when they come out there flaunting their stuff. Like, give me a break. It's totally unacceptable in my realm. One thing I gotta say for sure too, because the people in Switzerland are at least they're being vigilant. They see what's going on, and many of them know that with whole migration status and trying to like shove multiculturalism down their throats, many have realized it is the Club of Rome agenda. You cannot force people into these areas which they've been accustomed to for all these years. It doesn't matter where you're from. I find this pretty disturbing. But many of them out there in Switzerland want to prepare themselves at all costs. So that's the people they claim that why Germany never invaded Switzerland because they're up on mountain. There's a mountainous area and they have their firearms. There's a claim on that. And there's other claim too that hey they got gold and jewelry that was taken from the Nazis shipped there. That's allegedly. But the main topic, they were armed. So at least they want to prepare themselves. And they are entitled to. And I know the folks in Switzerland, a lot of great people out there. They got great sharpshooters. They're responsible firearms owners as well. So enough of the firearms here. Next one. I got this originally from David Icke. And I'm going to see where it came from. Oh, from Activist Post. So David Icke did forward it on Activist Post, which is good. So from Activist Post. David Icke, people say whatever they want about him, like he's some conspiracy reptilian nut. But you know what? However, he does endorse great information. So that's always been the key. Whether you agree with him completely or not, it's okay. But he does put out stuff. He does retweet stuff, which is great, or forward them, links, and so forth. So let's kind of check this out here. This is from Activist Post, done by Catherine J. Rompich. This is the title, Cell Tower Radiation Prevents Garden Cress Seed Germination in Danish Experiment. They have the things about with the Wi-Fi routers, and with no wireless signal, the healthy plant, and it does, looks like it does have some radiation content. But we'll just check this out. Says here, what do cell phones, cell towers, Wi-Fi, smart meters, and other smart meter devices have in common? They emit radiation, which no one wants to take seriously as having adverse health effects on humans. Medically, the adverse effects are called non-thermal health effects. In 2013, a ninth grade experiment for a national science fair found remarkable proof of radiation damage from Wi-Fi routers this was replicated by a peer review of the study. Wow. So what did both experiments show? Garden cress seeds placed near Wi-Fi routers failed to germinate. Here are photographs that corroborate those findings. 5 Danish schoolgirls prove what apparently no one in the microwave industry wants to. Radiation Wi-Fi causes adverse effects to any life forms in which their experiment were garden cress seeds. The young ladies placed the seeds near 2 Wi-Fi routers, waited, and took photographs for 12 days. The results, failure of seeds to germinate, can be seen in the above photographs, and they show that there. And there's some things too about the project. Stop Smart Meters in the UK. It looks like some folks won some awards, which is awesome. And it says here, so what does that experiment portend for humans? That similar effects can occur from cell towers too. 2 researchers, Dr. Kamaritz and Johansson, conducted a partial replication of the original Danish student study using cell towers instead of Wi-Fi routers as a source of wireless radiation. They found that Cress seeds located 200 meters from two cell towers failed to germinate. What did they conclude from their findings? Wireless technology may effectively and seriously impact nature and should urgently be used much more cautiously. That wireless technology may effectively and seriously impact nature and should be used much more cautiously. Challenges why Wi-Fi routers are standard technology in USA schools. Why smart meters for electric, natural gas, and water utility companies are mandated and retrofit on every dwelling. And why cell towers, especially stingrays, 3. Litter the landscape like mushrooms after a spring rain, while radiation-emitting computers and smartphones are like appendages dangling from almost everyone's personage. All those technologies emit electromagnetic frequencies in various ranges with adverse consequences for the environment, plant life, as we've seen with the cress seeds, animals, and humans. Here are some studies that corroborate my last statement. Man-made electromagnetic waves have actually largely been shown to adverse effects on living organisms. These are the effects, for instance, mammals, birds, amphibians, bees, ants, fruit flies, protozoa, and there's all like little cases on here as well. In fact, they act firstly and essentially on the cellular membrane and so affect any living organism. Such waves has also been shown to impact plants at psychological and ecological levels. Any microwave technology device that transmits and receives information, signal, data, or voice messages emits EMFs, RFs, known as non-ionizing radiation, that produce non-thermal adverse health effects recognized by the American Academy of Environmental Medicine here, in which vested microwave technology interests poo-poo. They claim the only adverse health problem can be heated skin. More, let me see here. Oh, right here. They claim only the adverse problem that can be heat skin, and none of their devices cause that. However, that science is based on early radar tests done in the 1950s and 60s. Now it's 2016. This chart shows ranges of non-ionizing and ionizing radiation at the frequencies. Now I have a bridge on the moon I like to sell. Who wants to buy it? No one, I'm certain, believes that factual statement. Then, why, oh why, do consumers believe microwave technologies are not harmful? I remember when cigarettes were smoked by doctors and Camels were their favorite brand. When will consumers get out from under the notion that it's on the market, there's nothing wrong with it? It's been tested accurately for safety. We must have every updated version of the product. And there's plenty of sources on here. And you can check all the stuff from these doctors as well. And I did have, heard interviews on these things, and you always gotta like, even with the microwave ovens when they came out, they always say like at the restaurants, like microwave and work. So if you have a pacemaker, please be aware. And it does make sense, and that's why myself, I try not to go on the internet all the time because I try to be very minimal. And I have my habits too, which is a shame. But I think they should get products that can really filter those. If I'm correct, it'd be Blue Shield, maybe one of them. Blue Shield, I think they're based out of Australia, which I remember Vinny Eastwood. He has a show in New Zealand. He talks about that. So it's Blue Shield. I think it's on American Freedom Radio. So I might put that on there. If not, just look it up. That would be great. You have to always question everything. That's why with this technology is good, but what are the side effects? It has its pros and cons. People tell me what happened to the internet goes. You know what? It'll be inconvenient, but I can manage. This time I haven't been on the internet for like a week or two, and that has happened. And you know what? I love it. Doesn't bother me one bit. We have to always look at these as a want, not a need. to a certain extent. Plus, we gotta get devices, including myself, to fight these radiation areas, and because our health is we should need to invest in our health more. And that's how I look at it. So even with your kids, with your cell phones, because there's in cases, many of the children that have cell phones or use tablets, they get radiation illnesses. Some of them, I remember one of my union brothers' son, his son had a tumor, and I don't know in his brain. I don't know if it's based on that, but that because I'm not gonna say. However, it's possible because a lot of young children are still developing themselves. So please, safety first. That is top priority. Take care of your health and your families as well. All right, let's check this out. There's a little blog from John Rappaport. Mm, it's interesting, huh? I should have. It's an oldie but a goodie. Mm, yeah, why not? Let me check this out. Mm, yeah, it's gonna take a while, but it's an archive. I should have known about this a while back, but don't worry, archives are good because sometimes I may forget something, and if they put it out there, I'm gonna share it with you. So this is interesting. It came out May 18th to be exact. It says here, shocker, the dangers of ultrasound. The great Jim West does it again from NoMoreFakeNews.com. Every time, wow, Jim West, new finding, it is a revelation. Some years ago, I wrote this about Jim. I always find it riveting to come across an independent investigator who is bringing new ground against all odds. Jim West is such a person. His meticulous analysis of West Nile disease, in fact caused by toxic pollution, not a virus, has turned the establishment on its head. We should all thank him for his work. If I were the king of Pulitzers, I would give him a dozen. He is what truly deep reporting is all about. In the sane world, his revelations would bring about the firing of scores of so-called medical journalists and disease researchers, and he would be sitting at the top of the heap. Not in order to exercise arbitrary power, but simply because he has trumped the lazy and the incompetent and the lying professionals who are supposed to tell what is going on. There are many things I could say in praise of Jim's work. Instead, I'll present an excerpt from the notice of his book. It's a book you all should have and read. It's a book that should receive a wide notice. It's a book that should change standard medical practice. It's a book that can save many lives. And it has the context over here, the book called Potential Ultrasound, a new bibliography of human studies conducted in modern China. Jim West has released an unprecedented bibliography of critical ultrasound research. It's a book available at Amazon.com. Ultrasound is a highly controversial topic. It can now be said without hyperbole that an understanding of its mysteries are essential to the well-being of the individual and the human species. The ultrasound commonly refers to diagnostic ultrasound, an acoustic technology utilized to view images of the fetus in real time in its position within the mother and to view the mother's reproductive organ. It is an economic boon to medical practitioners to advocate its routine use. Diagnostics ultrasound is widely declared to be harmless to the fetus, despite some mothers describing via online forums such as Thinking Mother's Revolution, a vaginal bleeding and pain, and others describing every detail related to ultrasound and pharmaceutical or vaccine associated damage to their child. Ultrasound is now being applied to the most of the entire world population during its fetal stage. The health implications are vast in terms of physical and psychological health for the individual and society. See Fetal Ultrasound, Johns Hopkins Medicine Health Library. Ultrasound appears to have the human species on a tragic path due to subtle and not so subtle effects. of ultrasound exposure. Critics argue, for example, that the exponential rise in autism incidences as a product of fetal exposure to ultrasound. If they are correct, then it may take many generations to recover from this misguided application of modern technology. Technical history. Ultrasound imaging technology for diagnostic examinations evolved from a type of echoing imaging originally developed as sonar, a technology invented to detect submarines by pinging sound waves off the submarine hull and electronically measuring the echo, the duration required to reflect ultrasound from the submarine hull back to the source of the ultrasound. In the medical field, ultrasound has been in use for many decades, employed to generate echo images of the fetus. Ultrasound is not ordinary sound, however. It is a highly unusual form of sound when used for the purpose of prenatal or obstetric diagnostic examinations. Humans ordinarily are capable of hearing sounds in the range of 20 to 20,000 cycles per second hertz. Ultrasound for fetal examination carries a frequency in the range of 3 to 9 megahertz millions of cycles per second, above the EMF frequencies on the AM radio band. Ultrasound imaging technology has supplanted, to an extent, the earlier imaging technology X-rays. That older technology is now known to publicly to be hazardous, to be carcinogenic, serogenic, excuse me. However, it took decades for its knowledge to become public. The history of medical X-ray imaging may be parallel for ultrasound history. X-rays were previously known to be the risk through caution, continuously advocates as harmless by the medical profession. Hazards unconfirmed. Ultrasound is known to have potential to produce harmful biological effects in the fetus. This has been found a vile animal and cell studies. However, these studies have supposedly not been confirmed by human studies. Funding for ultrasound studies has virtually disappeared since the late 1980s, despite the FDA raising ultra intensity limits in 1991. Sybil et al. 2013 provides definite insurance. Although laboratory studies have shown that diagnostic levels of ultrasound can produce physical effects in tissue, there is no evidence from human studies of causal relationship between diagnostic ultrasound exposure during pregnancy and adverse biological effects to the fetus. It is by Sarah L. Sybil, B.S., Gerald R. Harris, Ph.D., and Diane M. H. Ph.D. Trends in Diagnostic Ultrasound Acoustics Output from Data Reported to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for Device Indications that include fetal applications. That's pages, it's like way back there. Pages 1921. Okay, well, confirm here. Confirmed in China. Unknown to Western scientists, the hazards of ultrasound have been confirmed in China since the late 1980s, where thousands of women volunteering for abortion, thousands of maternal-fetal pairs were exposed to carefully controlled diagnostics ultrasound and the abortive matter, then analyzed via laboratory techniques. For these human studies, Professor Ro Fang of Nanjing University published guidelines in 2000. Commercial or educational fetal ultrasound imaging should be strictly eliminated. Ultrasound for the identification of fetal sex and fetal entertainment imaging should be strictly eliminated. For the best early pregnancy, avoid ultrasound. Fang is very clear. He is also gentle. He could have written bluntly, for a lesser quality pregnancy, use ultrasound. He could have written fetus or child instead of pregnancy. A new bibliography. An unprecedented bibliography of Chinese ultrasound studied by Jim West is now available as a published book with a commentary, illustrated graphs, and tables. This is a presentation of Anarcha, i.e., virtually important but unknown scientific studies. The title is 50 Human Studies Indicate Extreme Risk for Parental Ultrasounds, a new bibliography. This is also the most important bibliography and commentary ever compiled for the field of the ultrasound criticism. Through, for legal reasons, it concludes, and implications should be suspended, pending trustworthy, authoritative review. The book presents human studies conducted in modern China, which examines the results of an in utero fetal exposure to diagnostic ultrasound. They far exceed Western science in terms of technical sophistication, era relevancy, volume of work, and number of subjects. They bring empirical evidence of ultrasound hazards. These studies involve the exposure over the 2,700 maternal fetal pairs to diagnostic ultrasound. The number of scientists involved are approximately 100. Pregnant women were carefully selected, then exposed to controlled ultrasound sessions. Ethical concerns were carefully observed. Abortive matter was examined via state-of-art technology, e.g., electron microscopy, flow cytometry, and various biochemical analysis, immuno and histo. The results were compared against the results of sham-exposed pregnant women exposed at zero intensity. Chinese scientists measured damage to the brain, kidney, cornea, corallic villi, and immune system. They determined the amount of ultrasound exposure required to produce damage to the human fetus and that the amount was found to be very low. Ultra hazards to the human fetus were confirmed without doubt. Western scientists had previously found hazards via animal and cell studies. However, their findings were deemed inclusive because they were not confirmed by human studies. Humans can be of two types. One, epidemiological studies, i.e. population reviews, and two, in utero exposure studies where abortive matter is evaluated in a laboratory following diagnostic ultrasound exposure to the fetus in the mother. Sorry about that. When scientists have conducted only a few epidemiological studies and virtually no human exposure studies, epidemiological, hope I'm pronouncing this right, studies are complex, having many statistical variables, and are thus highly vulnerable to biased interpretation. They are often published as a moot or statistically insignificant, despite finding patterns of the ultra damage due to the abortion ethics in utero exposure studies were virtually banned in the Western realm. Within the entire world population, the medical industry has not reported one case of the human damage. Thereby, without certain proof, authorities continued on with the assumption that humans were resistant to ultrasound toxicity. Chinese studies were unknown in the Western realm, little known even in the East. These 23 years of critical research from 1988 to 2011. Unfortunately, these studies were overwhelmed by a tremendous flood of studies that promote medical and therapeutic innovations for ultrasound. This is interesting here, right? The studies have remained disconnected from the Western realm, beyond discussion outside of China, being the casualty of the cultural and language gaps and lacking a benefit for the industry. These studies are not generally available through global search engines or medical databases. Even if a researcher knew the titles, the studies would not be found. However, they are available through internal links within the Chinese debates. The research path, as of 2013, Jim West began his research out of frustration. He had experienced the impossibilities of discussion whenever the topic of ultrasound hazards was attempted, even with his nearest friends. He has also brought eloquent documentation to no avail. He was met with reflective blocks that were passive and aggressive, apparently out of fear of the birth process and a belief that ultrasound would provide assurance. Realizing that people require authoritative statements, Jim searched for a simple statement of empirical evidence that could not be denied. After several months of intensive research within this Western scientific realm, he, like others, realized there was little definite evidence that would satisfy the strict industrial requirements. That is, there are few human studies of any kind. Human studies have been deemed by authorities to be essential for confirmation of hazards. He was aware of the hundreds of animals and cells studied, but they were known to be ill-designed and inconclusive. Excellent critical studies were contradicted by competing studies that declare ultrasound safe. Jim did find a very few strong animal studies that have not been contradicted, but they were ignored or rejected by mere authoritative assertion. See, you got people believe they're smarter than everybody else. I will continue on here. Electrophoresis. As working for the research theory, Jim hypothesized that ideal modern ultrasound study would utilize a very sensitive type of chromatography called electrophoresis to detect cell damage caused by ultrasound exposure. Electrophoresis is a simple technology, the moving of electric current through a sample of biological matter in order to draw its variation components through a gel-covered plate. The various components separate out through the gel, creating visual patterns for analysis. Electrophoresis is used to analyze biological complexes such as a nucleic acid, DNA, or RNA. It is employed, for example, in DNA fingerprinting to identify people, their DNA to detect their prior presence at a location by examining samples of blood, hair, or tissue, and then matching those analytical results with suspects who have been similarly analyzed. Jim focuses on electrophoresis, lead to a Chinese electrophoresis study of ultrasound passation for DNA fragmentation in abortive matter. The study is published by pristine scientific format and published in English. The study's reference lead to an expanding tree of studies located in a Chinese online database such as CNKI. Though these studies are primarily in Chinese language, many contain an abstract translated in English manually or by machine software. Many studies were reviewed by Professor Ro Feng of the Acoustic Institute at Zhejiang University. He determined guidelines from the studies stipulating that routine ultrasound be avoided. Only if there were exceptional medical indications should ultrasound be allowed, and at minimum safe intensity. Sessions should be very brief, no more than 3 to 5 minutes at the most. Multiple sessions should be avoided because hazards are cumulative. Sensitive organs were found in damage at 1 minute exposure. The Chinese studies echo and confirm the earlier ignored and rejected 1984 consensus statement, written and published by the National Institute of Health and signed by the preeminent American study scientists on that era. So there's a link for that from the NIH Diagnostic Ultrasound Imaging and Pregnancy. NIH Consensus Developing Conference Statement is on February 6, 1984. Currently, the medical industry loudly claims that ultrasound is harmless, while it advocates routine ultrasound for pregnant women, even pre-pubescent girls. It is not uncommon for ultrasound sessions to use intensities and durations far above these used in the Chinese studies. Jim has done the math, graphically illustrates the evidence. For example, this comparison of Western critical studies and Chinese studies in terms of durations to damage when subjected to the average device intensity for a common diagnostic ultrasound session in B mode. These durations are approximate extrapolations. Jim's ultrasound causation model is fully compatible with the vaccine model because it includes the concept of toxic synergy, and ultrasound is an effective synergist. Ultrasound is theoretically capable of initiating fetal vulnerabilities to subsequent toxic exposure. Thus, the risk of subsequent exposure to vaccines, birth drugs, antibiotics, and other environmental stressors would be raised by prenatal ultrasound, not in addition but as multiplier, emphasis added. And there's a link for that as well. You can check it out in the book also. It's very scary when you learn all these things about ultrasound and other stuff. You have to always look at everything like technology, the pros and cons. Yes, I do agree on that, the pros and cons. So I do find this a little bit disturbing, but you know what? We have to put this out there because people assume it's all safe because they tell you so. Because they tell you so. And another example of the propaganda matrix. Fish you in, hook, line, and sinker. So I'm gonna send this out to some of my colleagues as well on this. So I'm posting my Facebook page if you want to read it yourself, Twitter and all that good stuff. So please, to all my sisters out there, who are been pregnant and expecting, I beseech you, try not to use those ultrasounds or any radiation technology to put on your children because it can be effective and it can hurt them and affect their childhood and your lives as well. And even the fathers too. I encourage you to support your mates on this because raising a child, you all got to stick together. You all have to stick together. So I don't have any kids. I'm not saying I'm lucky, but I'm looking out for everyone else's best interest. And I'm glad, Rock Report put this out again on Twitter, so I got to thank him for that. And that's good for now on that area. Next one, got this from originally from Lou Rockwell. Came out yesterday. This is by Justin Raimondo from antiwar.com. Says here, the Mossad Caucus exposed. And as it reads here, once again, a scandal involving spying and the state of Israel is rocking Capitol Hill with one big difference. This time, instead of using the usual scenario with Israel spying on us, the tables are turned, and those usually hapless Americans who have been secretly looking over their shoulder over their ally. The Wall Street Journal reports that the National Security Agency not only eavesdropped on the private communications of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but that the National Security Agency targeting of Israeli leaders and officials also swept up the contents of some of their private conversations with U.S. lawmakers and American Jewish groups that raised fears and oaths. Moments, one senior U.S. official said that the executive branch would be accused of spying on Congress. At the time, Netanyahu and his government were engaged in an all-out campaign to torpedo the nuclear agreement with Iran, and the efforts wasn't limited to using their American fifth column to put pressure on Congress and on the Obama administration. Israeli intelligence planted malware in the hotel computers. Wow, man. Where U.S. negotiators were staying during negotiations in Switzerland. They intercepted highly sensitive inside information on the talks and leaked it. They tried to leak to members of Congress opposed to the Iran deal, and no doubt occurred to the U.S. intelligence community to ask this question and answering it, all a matter of national security, as the journal reports. Stepped up, NSA eavesdropping revealed to the White House how Mr. Netanyahu and his advisors have leaked details of the U.S.-Iran negotiations learned through Israeli spying operations to undermine the talks, coordinated talking points with Jewish American groups against the deal, and asked the undecided lawmakers that what it would take to win their votes, according to current and former officials familiar with the intercept. The original piece of legislation empowered to the NSA to collect information as long as its primary purpose is to discover the activities of foreign agents in the United States. Surely Israeli government officials and Americans acting under their orders qualify as foreign agents. So the NSA collection in this instance was and is perfectly legal. Furthermore, federal agencies were given much more leeway under the amendments to the original legislation contained in the Patriot Act. As the Electronic Privacy Information Center puts it, the government can now obtain a pen-registered trap and trace device for any investigations to gather foreign intelligence information without showing that the device has, is, or will be used by a foreign agent or by an individual engaged in international terrorism or clandestine intelligence activities. However, USA Patriot Act includes a provision prohibiting use of FISA, Japan registered surveillance under any circumstances against a United States citizen where the investigation is conducted solely on the basis of activities protected by the First Amendment. This exemption limits, to some extent, the potential overreach of this expanded authority. Israel's Congressional Amen Corner, which is now holding scandal and is determined to launch an investigation, claims that this surveillance was aimed at their First Amendment right to take orders from Bibi Netanyahu. However, this defense fails to make an important distinction between speech and espionage. The Israeli government was clearly engaged in the latter when it bugged U.S. diplomats engaged in delicate negotiations and released sensitive information to domestic opponents of the Iran deal, including but not necessarily limited to members of Congress. Indeed, the Associated Press published a sensationalistic account by George John purporting to reveal a draft of the agreement which supposedly let the Iranians inspect themselves. This story was scrubbed of the damning details in subsequent versions and was effectively debunked. But the damage was done. To this day, Donald Trump and the Israeli lobby are running around citing this is as evidence that the agreeable is a bad deal. AP cited an anonymous official as their source, but neglected to tell what the government this person represents. The Israeli lobby was more brazen, however, in identifying the source as Army Karim, managing director at the Israeli project, admitted the Obama administration tried keeping this information secret, which would have prevented American lawmakers and the American people from finding out the full extent of our diplomats' collapse to Iran. The Associated Press had to get the document from overseas and reveal it that way. From Mossad straight to George John's word processor, that the very same people who supported surveillance of Americans and vehemently denounced efforts by civil libertarians to end the NSA scooping from our data indiscriminately are now screaming foul when confronted with their own candooling with Israeli foreign agents is the kind of hypocrisy we have come to expect from this crowd. Spying on ordinary Americans is fine with them, but when it comes stopping Israeli espionage, well, that's just not cool. Yet, a broader point needs to be made. These people have inverted the proper role of government surveillance. They support it when it involves spying on, say, antiwar.com, as revealed in this FBI memo, where there's a link for that. But when it comes to perfectly legitimate targets of such intelligence gathering, as such efforts of a hostile foreign power aimed at the scourging delegate negotiations, they're against it. What else is new? And they know perfectly well what they are doing. Marco Rubio joined his neoconservative backers in denouncing the U.S. spying on our allies, and even averred it might be worse than some people might think. But in private, he defended the surveillance. A reporter from Breitbart.com overheard him telling Representative Trey Gowdy, "We spy on everyone. That's the nature of intelligence. It's more complicated than the story makes it seem." Wall Street Journal, if I had in parentheses for the story, it's in between that. You bet it's more complicated than Rubio and his allies dare to publicly admit. Israel is one of the most aggressive spying operations targeting the U.S., which our intelligence officials have testified is unrivaled and unseemly. During congressional hearings over efforts by the Israel lobby to get the Jewish state enrolled in the visa waiver program, the U.S. intelligence officials testified against legislation that would have allowed Israelis unfettered access to our shores. One congressional aide told Newsweek that revelations detailing the nature and extent of Israeli spying on and in the U.S. were terrifying. The ever-clueless Rand Paul went on Fox News saying he was appalled by the NSA interpretation of Israeli agents. Communications babbling. This is exactly what we need the NSA reform. Oh, good grief. What is this spy going to say about this? No, it isn't. The junior senator from Kentucky and formerly rising presidential candidate went on to conflate targeting counterintelligence surveillance with listening in on foreigners' conversations when they're talking to Americans. We're scooping up tens of thousands of conversations with Americans, which is a real problem. You can see how it stifles speech when you eavesdrop on congressmen. It might stifle what they say and who they communicate with. This is absolutely baloney. U.S. intelligence agencies had good reasons to target the Israelis who were engaged in espionage against the United States. If members of Congress were part of that covert Israeli effort and got caught with their pants down, like former Representative Jane Harman did, then that's just tough. If you're going to function as an unregistered agent of a foreign power, then that's the risk you take and the price you pay. These people are just lucky that they weren't being prosecuted for receiving classified information when they weren't authorized to possess it, not to mention violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act. In a rational world, they'd be in the dock facing charges. Unfortunately, we live in a world where the Israeli lobby and not the law of the land or common sense calls the shots. John Jay is rolling in his grave, I would say. One bit in the Wall Street Journal piece was particularly telling. In discussing the administration's vow to ease off on monitoring the communications of foreign leaders, one official has cited as saying, there was a little debate over Israel. Going dark on Bibi? Of course, we wouldn't do that. That's because Israel is right up there with China and Russia as one of our principal adversaries in the covert world of spy versus spy. Israel an ally? Don't make me laugh. Okay, and you can check this. He has a Twitter account, so you can check it out, and there's some books you can see as well. And plenty of stuff. There's some links on here by Justin Raimondo. I always enjoy anarwar.com. So everyone, if you want to check them out, please support these individuals because they are really creating dents to the establishment, the tyrannic entity, one world order, etc. Another adventures of Cloak and Dagger. And of course, there's a lot of things about the Israeli government trying to tell the world what should we say, what should we think. If we disagree, it would be anti-Semitic. But the problem is, it's being whitewashed, and that's what's driving the crazy. More people are being awakened. Even that one organization, Jews Against Zionism, Hasidic Jews don't like what's going on. They condemn it. This is why you have to always look at things in the bigger picture, my friend. All this spying on one another. And of course, they want to tell us how to wipe our behinds. I still give them the middle finger. And all those people in Congress or people or candidates go, oh, we got to stand with Israel. Do this, do that, do this, do that. It's like, good grief. Think for yourselves. Look after American interests first. Any questions? Read the Phillips Papers 2 through 5, written by John Jay and George Washington's Farewell Address, which is on my archive. You can look it up for yourselves. Another adventures of being exposed. I say this, Mossad's just another example of, and people that support them, they're walking around stripped naked. And, the time's going to come. Blowback is going to affect all of those people that support this form of tyranny, not just in the United States or Israel, but the world. And I can sit here, don't have to do anything. Because now, one thing's for sure, they may be watching us, but we're watching them. Finally, this came from 10th Amendment Center, a little campaign. And it says here, a 10-step plan for constitutional recovery. Is our situation extremely difficult? Yes. It's by Michael Bolton, by the way. And of course, but is it hopeless? Absolutely not. But in order to actually turn things around, a few sacred cows need to be dealt with. Here are 10 steps you should take right now to set the stage for a dramatic constitutional recovery. And let's just read them as we speak. Gotta wait a little bit. Oh, okay, boom. Looks like I went a little bit over here. I'm at a Whole Foods, by the way, so which is okay. I'm back on. Yay! Oh man, come on. Okay, awesome. One more time. Okay, now it's working. Then we gotta go for the 10-step program for constitutional recovery. Remember, all this centralization don't mean diddly squat. Washington, D.C. can't think for us. That's why we got the Bill of Rights. May not be perfect, but you know what? It can be implemented by each and every one of you. And let's just check this out. By now, you've likely read plenty about how the Constitution has been twisted to give the federal government power for far beyond anything the founders had ever planned. You already know about the dangers of an unchecked president, of a Congress that passes bills without reading them, of agencies that do what they want, and judges who believe in present over original meaning. So I won't waste your time sharing more of the same. In this situation, is the situation hopeless? Absolutely not. But in order to actually turn things around, a few sacred cows need to be dealt with. Here are 10 steps you should take right now to set for a dramatic constitutional recovery. 1. Recognize that massive change will only come through a revolution in thought. John Adams forcefully asserted that the American Revolution was not, in fact, the war for independence. The real American Revolution, Adams wrote, was a radical change in the principles, opinions, sentiments, and the affections of the people. 2. Take an honest and fearless inventory of the current situation. It is not just Obamacare that violates the Constitution. It's almost everything these people do, from telling you what size toilet you can have, to what kind of light bulb you can buy, or what kind of plant you can grow and consume in your own backyard. Is that our Federal Reserve, their wars, their executive orders, their regulations, their national security, and everything in between. Entire agencies, ATF, DEA, STA, no, TSA, excuse me, and many others shouldn't even exist, much less do what they do. Even programs you like, you feel entitled because they force you to pay them for years, are constitutional violations. 3. Understand that federal courts are part of the federal government. If a company was suing you, would you hire one of that company's lawyers to represent you? If you and I had a dispute, would you want my girlfriend Sarah to decide who's right or who's wrong? No. Federal judges absolutely cannot be impartial when it comes to federal power. Think rubber stamp. 4. Except that our problems started well before the president took office. Massive violations on the Constitution have been happening under every president in modern times. Replacing one president with another has happened every 4 to 8 years for a long enough time to know that the next president is going to be really bad too. Guaranteed. And if the guarantee fails, the one after will be awful. Putting your constitutional eggs into one person's basket only ensures that the Constitution will end up totally smashed. Right on that. 5. View both major political parties as an enemy of liberty. No one in their right mind would see Lucky Luciano as a savior to the evils of Al Capone or vice versa. Maybe you could convince one of your friends to do all the dirty work needed to rise up the ladder of the organization. So one day they would be in a place to reduce the harm it does to you personally. Maybe, but very unlikely. Even if you could, at the end of the day, a mob boss would still run the organization and would have you killed if needed. 6. Humbly admit that you never cast a vote for federal office. That has reduced the power of federal government. When you vote the bums out, you just get new bums. No further explanation necessary. Whatever you do, folks, stay vigilant. That's how I see it. 7. Admit that feds will never stop the feds. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison both recognized if the federal government ever became the sole and exclusive arbiter of the extent of its own power, that power will always grow, regardless of protests, lawsuits, or elections. They were right. 8. Be ready for the long haul. Liberty is not a spectator sport. It takes action, sustained and persistent. It is time we all get out of our comfort zone, even that what means we risk something. It for the future, and it's worth it. We all need to be ready to do far more than what we are doing today. That includes committing to doing something instantly until the job is done. 9. One step at a time. Without being fully on board with these first 9 steps, the 10th will almost certainly end in failure. You might find yourself distracted by the same old tricks they played on us for decades. Think Bush versus Clinton. I say bread and circuses. 10. Be entirely ready to take a new approach to stopping the federal government. You are facing a federal government that lies to you, spies on you, claims the power to lock you up indefinitely, that means forever, without any due process. They rip you off at every turn and give your money to the politically connected. They make up the rules as they go and change them on a whim. They have absolutely no respect for the Constitution or your liberty. They mean business, and that means you need to mean business too. These people only get away with this stuff as long as you continue to use their approved methods to stop them from oppressing you. James Madison, known as the Father of the Constitution, told us just what to do. Isn't a person alive today who knows more about the Constitution than he did, so his advice needs to be followed now. When enough people put Madison's advice into practice, there is not much that the federal government can do to force their unconstitutional acts, regulations, and mandates down our throats. Are you in? That's what I say, my friends. Are you in? I'm in. Been doing it for a good period of time and have no shame whatsoever. My attitude is this: the federal government needs us more. We need them. Each individual, the United States, and the world, okay, can have the power, have the capabilities of empowering yourselves. Lift up, improve your conscious of awareness. Eternal vigilance is healthy. Keeping them on their toes intimidates them. Don't get mad. Be inspired. Yeah, I get ticked off now and then, but you know what? I'm going to use productive resolutions. And hopefully you do the same. Or solutions. You folks have to do the same. It could be in different methods. It could be on geopolitics, speaking, podcasting, artwork. It doesn't matter. You gotta use your natural born rights. You can never take it away from me, my friends. Never. Don't let these dinkleberries tell you what to think, regardless if they're Democratic, Republican, Independent, etc. I've been saying this for a good period of time. Government in Latin means control of the mind. Good example, USA Patriot Act. Before they got changed to USA Freedom Act, which is Patriot Act Light, 8 states and 400 municipalities said to the federal government, no. That's what's awesome. You can look it up. Bill of Rights Defense Committee on USA Patriot Act. Interesting, great stuff. And I have used that document on a free speech permit item. The speech permit item they try to use a while back, November 8, 2011, like 4 years ago. I used that resolution, and I think it was clause 7. And there's a funny thing about it, when I read that, there's their own county attorney's eyes rose up. People behind me had their hands up. They loved it. I'm not saying I'm the best speaker out there, but I made impact. I got people thinking regardless of their political beliefs. It's called common interest. That's what I focus on. So it's in my blood, I guess. I'm considered a unifier. According to the Chinese Zodiac, the month of the pig, November, they consider I'm the unifier. So it's admirable, admiring. Like I said, my friends, we all have obligations. Don't complain. Do. Don't be afraid. What Thomas Jefferson said, regardless, I hear his dark side too. He's a slave owner and all that. Everyone has rough edges. But the one quote he says, When the people fear the government, it's tyranny. When the government fears people, that's freedom. And that is all, my friends. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to this episode. Plus, feel free to download and share it throughout your social media network. If you have any questions, comments, compliments, criticisms, love letters, hate letters, or send me something that's unusual or suggestion, it's something that information that I may like to check out. Don't be shy. However, please use your correspondence with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google Plus, Spreaker, which all my footnotes will be in there, iHeartRadio, YouTube, World Truth, and Scene.life. That's a new social media group, Scene.life. Pretty good stuff, too. I recommend it. Or you can email me at lokiluck3 at gmail.com. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Oh my goodness. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.